Mr. Altman,
Yes, ma'am.
who do we have to say the prayer this evening?
I don't know.
Mr. Altman,
Yes, ma'am.
who do we have to say the prayer this evening?
Okay, we're now streaming.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone tonight for our virtual budget work session. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Okay. Sorry about that. Mayor Bennett,
Here.
Vice Mayor Pardon,
Here.
Councilor Randolph,
Here.
Councilor Holloway,
Here.
Councilor Gore,
Here.
Councilor Denton,
Here.
Councilor Pelham.
Here.
Mayor Bennett, you have a quorum.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Dane to lead us in prayer and Councilor Holloway to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Madam Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the beautiful day we have and for all the gifts you bestowed upon us. We're eternally grateful for all the blessings you have given us. Lord, we ask that you be with us as we conduct the city business and let it be in a shining light in your eyes. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, is there a motion to accept or adopt, amend the work session agenda?
I move that we adopt the work session agenda.
Motion's been made by Vice Mayor Parton, seconded by Councilor Denton.
Yeah.
I don't see any hands for discussion. Roll call.
Councilor Randolph,
Yes.
Councilor Holloway,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Pardon,
Yes.
Councilor Gore,
Yes.
Councilor Denton,
Yes.
Councilor Pelham.
What are we voting on?
To accept or adopt the work session agenda.
Yes.
Okay, Mayor Pardon, you have a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. And I'll turn this over to Mr. Altman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hope everybody had a chance to at least get outside for a little bit today. It's a shame we're not all sitting out under a tree right now. Maybe we could do it down at the Riverwalk. Can I share my screen? Yes, I can. All right. So this evening, what we have for council is just an overview of our proposed FY22 operating and capital budgets. So the expenditure side. The last work session, we discussed some revenue where we were, and tonight is a discussion of expenditures. Overall, we, as always, these are the same items we went through last time. We're not driving our budget based on a tax rate increase. We're operating in the tax rates that we currently have. We're trying to meet budgetary needs. That we do have some items that do exceed levels from last year's budget, but we are trying to meet budgetary needs and be fiscally responsible and addressing the needs of our departments and that of the community. These are the 4 pillars that we've used since I've been here, looking at how we're going to develop the budget. We assess, we analyze, we look at preservation, our revenues meeting our costs, and then look at status, how are we handling matters that come up during the fiscal year that we did not budget for. As we discussed the last time, the operating and capital budgets combined is all of our total of our 31 funds is $848,289, which is an increase of about $8.8 million over fiscal year 21. Our operating budget, general operating fund, which is where we live and work out of, is a $54 million, $328,648, or about $1.7 million over FY21. We're not using any fund balance to budget to balance our budget. And again, there are no tax rate adjustments. So we did at the last meeting, council did address the healthcare issue on behalf of our employees. We thank you for that. We stayed, city absorbed the increase. So we're able to ensure that our employees are making at a minimum what they made, what they were receiving in their check on June 30th does not change or is not decreased when we get to the new fiscal year. We haven't taken in on any new projects or debt. Again, no fund balance. We did have our meeting with schools to discuss their needs. These are the proposed tax rates for the current year, or the current 2021 tax year and the FY21 budget. So again, we're staying at $1.13 per 100 for real estate, proposing staying at $3.50 per 100 for personal property, M&T at $3.05, and meals tax stays at 6%. The caveat note here at the bottom, when we take advantage of the American Rescue Act plan, they don't want us to reduce our tax rates to basically create the need for the funding. They want us to be able to use those dollars not to supplant any funding. So we can use them to offset any potential losses, but not a loss created by a reduction in our tax rates. The Revenue Committee, as we discussed at the last meeting, myself, the Assistant City Manager, Commissioner, Treasurer, Real Estate Assessor, Finance Director, and Budget Analyst. Again, this year we did that virtually. This is just a breakdown of all the proposed revenue funds of all of our budget. And then this is the general fund and how it looks as opposed to where we stood with FY21. And we see some growth again in our general fund budget. We defined some use of terms that we use in your book. We have your binder. We have those revenue terms. So we just want to remind you again what those terms mean as we go through the process and what is underneath that line, if you will. And then we get into our expenditure side. So this is the all funds expenditure budget versus what we saw with the revenue side. Sorry about how small this is. It's really difficult to, one, cut and paste, but also to get it all to fit on the page like we needed it to. So this shows the dollar change in each departmental budget as compared to FY21. We did not make any changes in the council budget. The $8 reduction is really, that's caught up in the personnel line items. So there wasn't any reductions in any of what y'all did last year. We held those lines, all those budgetary lines the same. The clerk's office budget, I'll go through some of these a little bit later with notable changes. So overall, again, a 3% increase in our general operating fund budget. Again, thank you for the healthcare decision at the last meeting. Our premium overall increased about $53,000 as opposed to the $110,000 we were looking at. This budget does include the 5% cost of living for comp board positions and the constitutional offices and the Department of Social Services that was approved by the state. So state will be passing those funds down for us to be able, well, for those positions to be able to benefit from that. One of the things that we would like to discuss is the ability to look at doing a class and comp study this year. Some of our surrounding jurisdictions are beginning implementation of, but a lot of them are also looking at changes to their pay. Prince George County, for instance, is putting about $750,000 of their $1,000 of their budget towards public safety salaries, which is going to kind of throw all of us a little bit out of whack again. So we'd like to look at doing a class and comp to one, update where we are. I don't know. I haven't know that I've had a conversation with many people regarding the one that was previously done as regard to how it served us. So it would be nice to be able to have a good study done. And also as part of that study, not only look at full-time salaries, but we haven't done anything with regard to looking at the salary scale for part-time workers since the class and comp study was done by Palmer and Kay, and that was probably the 2005 timeframe. Yeah. And then we've also we've been having a discussion, some of us in the region, with regard to these increases in public safety, to maybe potentially look at public safety as a separate component of our class and comp study. But also we've been having some conversations regarding looking at a public safety salary scale, maybe from a regional perspective. So we're not constantly, one community, in this case, say Prince George, increases their pay, then we have to react and we end up taking people from one another. So we're trying to find some way to provide some stability in that region, as opposed to we're just gouging each other. And it's not really going to help us in the long run to do that. And we all realize here that it's very difficult for us to really compete with Chesterfield and Henrico, Richmond, Hanover, but we shouldn't really be going toe to toe with each other. So that would be some of, if we're able to do a class and comp study, that we'd like to look at as we move forward in that effort. So I did recommend 6 positions in this year's budget. So we had 33 positions requested by departments, totaling over $2 million in costs. The positions that we're recommending, or I'm recommending, are 2 communications positions within the police department. Chief
Point of information, please. So are we going to wait for him to finish the presentation? Or are we going to ask questions in between? I just want to understand the layout so I can know how to proceed.
Did anyone hear Counselor Gore?
Yeah. If there's no objection, I mean, I'm okay. If Counselor Gore would like to ask the question, I'm okay. If that's okay with council.
I'm asking because there's 3 hands raised and it was on the last slide. So I didn't know if you wanted to finish the presentation or just have us come back and ask our questions. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the hands.
Oh, okay.
Apologies.
I'm happy to do it anyway.
My computer, but that's up to that's at the will of council. So council, this is the work session. The rules for questions and time do not apply because this is a listening and informational session. So any questions or comments or questions that you have to help you make an informed, decision or for informational purposes to help you understand the budget. If I do see hands, Mr. Altman, this is your work session. And I understand, council, if you guys want to keep it on that slide or you want to number the slide and then go back to it. And that's
the next question as we go.
I need council to opine. I need everyone in council to say yay or nay to be able to ask questions as we go, or to wait until the work session is over and then we can ask questions.
I'm fine with asking questions as we go.
Okay, I got one, I have two.
The rules speak to this because we address this in the rules. So whatever the rule says, and
As far as, and you guys have to excuse Miss Robinson is having technical difficulties.
okay.
So, I mean, if you guys are, if nobody's opposed to asking questions throughout the work session, hey, go for it. So, but please. be
Can you
mindful
go
of
back
everyone.
one slide, please? I know with myself, I think I saw Pelham and Randolph's hand up.
And Denton.
Denton's hand, okay. My question is with the classic comp study, we did this literally like 3 or 4 years ago. And when the results were done, the council that was present asked to revisit this for a long time to finish out going over the results. And there were some components that council had directed to be included in the classic comp study that staff did not do. In addition, there was questions about how it was being implemented and things of that nature. So my question is, why are we just ditching the classic comp study that we just did recently, as opposed to looking at the areas that need to be improved on?
So the class and comp study that was done was adopted prior to my arrival in 18. So we've got some date and time on its market competitive ability. So that's one of the reasons to look at where we are in the market today, because we know that we've made at least one adjustment to public safety, the police department side on the public safety pay scale. I know that others are making those adjustments and have made other adjustments. So from a market perspective, it's time, in my opinion, it's time to go and look at where we are in the market again. As far as I'm aware, we implemented all of the phases of the plan that we had that was presented and approved. I don't know what other components outside of the actual pay adjustments that we were looking at, and those pieces, what other adjustments council had directed staff to implement or look at beyond that aspect of it.
All right, there was a request to get a quote on the performance employee survey for their what is the word? Employee satisfaction survey. Staff was requested to get quotes. Supposedly that was done, but we never made it back to our agenda. And then additionally, the changes that were made, they were not updated in the HR policy, which is why that was requested on the agenda for a long time to get us to make those changes as well. So those are two things that were outstanding because we never completed the pay grade conversation or things of that nature and have it reflected in the actual policy that council adopts. And then, but you answered my question. I guess I talked to you more offline about this just to understand a little bit more. And then that's it. Thank you.
So one of the things so this may help a little bit. One of the things that I would like to do as part of the class and comp is we went away from grades and steps to pay bands, and that provides some difficulty. So I would like, part of the class and comp, I would like to return to a grade and step class and comp plan, which kind of helps and recognizes longevity and it helps with compression. Right now we just have bands and where you're put in that band, and so time and service doesn't count. And that creates some compression issues that we run into when we're looking at things. So that's another reason that I'd like to look at doing a class and comp, to look at how we're doing our pay scale, return back to that grade and step, but also the need to look at that part-time scale, which hasn't been addressed since Palmer and Kay, which is more than a decade ago. But also bringing us back more to the market where we are, what the market's looking at today, as opposed to what it was now 4 years ago.
Okay, I agree with the pay scale part because that's one of the reasons why I was saying what happened with it, because it wasn't done, in my opinion, the best way, and we never circled back. So okay, cool.
And part of my concern is the output of that class and comp, I don't think has served us well. So it's almost as if maybe we didn't get what we needed at that time. So we're really not 4 years behind the curve. We're actually maybe further behind the curve as a result of that, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Counselor Pelham and then Counselor Randolph.
Yes, how often in the world does comp studies happen? Every 4 to 5 years, every 1 to 2 years? What's the norm?
I would probably say you're looking at in between a 3 to 5 year range, ma'am.
Okay.
Every year would be a little bit much to be able to do it unless
Oh.
you have internal staff to be able to that's kind of dedicated to doing that. But you want to be able to kind of look at where you are every 3 to 5 years, and kind of also knowing and knowing that we can't compete with Chesterfield and Henrico and those north of us, but know what they're investing substantially this year in pay increases for their employees. So just trying to get a feel of what's going on in the market. So that's one of the reasons we're kind of in that year 4 out from when it was done in 17. So, and I can't remember if it was actually done in 17 or 16, but we're about 4 years out. So we're kind of in the middle of that 3 to 5 range.
Yes, I'm always confused about how can y'all determine that we're going to have an 8.8 increase in revenue, and we haven't finished the CAFRs from 18 yet. I really.
So our revenue projections aren't based on what happened last year or the year before.
Okay.
From that perspective, we look
Okay.
at where we are
Those
with how much.
projections.
We're looking at a projection, yes, ma'am, but we know that, say, real estate, we have a total value of real estate in the city of X number of dollars, and you do the math with your
Right.
tax rate, and you can figure out how much you're going to get in real estate, similar to the values you have in M&T, which are the two big components that roll into our operating budget. So that's kind of where we are and how we do that. And then you look at the trend, but we had what we had revenue wise over the past few years coming in, but you also know that you have a total value of housing of X, whatever that number is, and you can do the math to get your tax revenue that will be generated by real estate.
Okay. So real estate, M&T, all the sales, meals tax, and all those revenue producing areas. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 8.8 million. So
it's really general fund wise. It's really this 54,328,000.
Yeah. Okay. But this 1.7 million increase in the general operating fund is a part of the overall 8.8, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. But
Okay.
some of the other funds that build into that are enterprise fund that we have at Wastewater. You've got federal dollars that come in and state dollars that come in. So all of those together total up to that 180 million or that increase. But what we operate out of is just that general fund, $54 million.
And is the wastewater producing revenue? I thought they just almost break even.
Well, as Mr. Parton can tell you, we had our wastewater commission meeting today, and we are producing revenue. We take leachate from landfills, which is basically dirty water, and treat it through our system. And this year, at current, we're over $10 million in additional revenue, and anticipating that will probably in this end of still have a quarter to go. We're anticipating that we'll probably have $12 million in revenue this year. So the more that it rains, the more this water is produced, the more that comes in and we treat. So the more revenue we get from outside sources.
But are they spending everything they get?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. That's what we're trying to do, is take that leachate money and put it back over at the plant to fund the capital program that it should be currently at, and get caught up on all that deferred maintenance from projects that haven't been completed since 2016, and trying to get the plants back up to where it needs to be for 2021, 2022. And that way, if we can use that leachate money to pay for the capital program, then the city does not have to come out of pocket to pay for it.
Okay. And the marina, I guess I'll let someone else go and then I'll come back and ask more questions about the operating and capital budget.
Councilor Randolph?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. City Manager, I understand that we have lost in recent weeks 4 police officers. Do we know why they're leaving? Is it salary issues or is it other things? Or can we attribute some of this to salary ranges?
I think some we can look at from a salary perspective. I don't think we can. So one officer that we lost went to the private sector, making substantially more than making here in the public sector.
Right.
We're losing some officers to other jurisdictions. Some of it has to do with pay.
Right.
Which,
Okay.
you know, we know that we know it's going to be competitive. We know that our officers have all heard about what Prince George is planning to do with their salaries. So that's going to be a concern with losing officers to our neighbor.
Okay.
So salary is a factor in some of our departures. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My concern is a class and comp study. How much is it going to cost us?
It could probably about $100,000.
And that money will derive from, you want to put it into the budget and already have looked at that amount coming out.
It's one of my decision points. Yes, ma'am.
Right. And if we are regionally trying to work together, or potentially, as you said, all of us in the region trying to work together, then how is that going to impact us if we all do class and comp study but use different people?
Yeah.
Looks to me like, go ahead.
No, I was going to say you're right. And we've just started that conversation. We haven't really gotten into any of the meat of it. Part of it coming out of the realization of what Prince George is proposing. I would say some of us were surprised when we heard that and kind of looked at each other and thought, well, all we're going to do is rob Peter to pay Paul now. We're going to steal from each other. So maybe there's a need to look at this from a different perspective. And so again, we just kind of started that conversation, but we recognize from a chief administrative officer position that we're going to be stealing each other's employees.
Yeah. And 2 comments. I'd like to hear more about the meeting this afternoon for that leachate money, to see what the thoughts were from the plants about utilizing that and not getting reimbursed for anything and getting that plant up to date. 2, I'd like to tell Mrs. Pelham that in the banking world, it averages about every 5 years, unless there is a huge economic indicator that changes anything with the economics of the country or the region. And secondly, that I'd like to talk to you more, or thirdly, I'd like to talk to you more about the class and comp study, because it certainly would benefit us, but has Prince George done a class and comp study, or just doing the police salaries?
So from my understanding, they are just investing in their public safety salaries. They're giving all other employees a 2% COLA. They're investing heavily in fire, EMS, and police salaries.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So to address the issue with regard to the leachate money and the meeting today, and Mr. Parton is our chair.
Yeah, he has his hand up too.
Yeah. So if he wants to jump in on that one, he can go right ahead.
I don't know what it was for, but yeah, Vice Mayor Parton.
Yeah, I mean, I guess specifics would you like to know from the meeting? I mean, I can give kind of just a general overview of the meeting this afternoon. I just didn't know if there were specific things that you might, want answers for or some clarity on.
Well, I guess
Well,
I'm sorry. I guess the only thing is that I know we're talking about the leachate, but Vice Mayor Parton, we do have a section within our within our agenda for a regular session for you to bring all that information back to us. But if you would like to, I mean, for informational purposes, please.
Yeah, like I said, I can answer questions now. I can do
Go
it
ahead
at
and
the
answer your
agenda
question.
next go around. Whatever is, the pleasure of the council.
I would like you to answer the question.
Okay.
is that for me now to
Yes,
ask my question?
Yes, Councilor Randolph.
Thank you. And Councilor Porton, I guess the thing that interests me the most is what we've been talking about as a council for a while with you, giving us information about working with the plants to consider, instead of taking back that money, the reinvestment of that money to bring the plant up to date. Are we at that point yet? Have they given any indication that they are on board with that? No. And is it something that will be a short, quick? Otherwise, I can wait for it or talk to you outside of this if not.
Yeah, I mean, that's a easy enough question. So I think even Mr. Altman can attest to this. When the idea was first put forward, I want to say back in 2019, it was kind of, I don't want to say scoffed at, but it wasn't given a warm welcome. But as time has progressed with bringing resurfacing this idea a little bit more often, and also with the need for capital improvements at the wastewater plant itself increasing since it's so old, and a lot of things are inadequate, that really do need some upgrades and just need total rehab and new equipment fixes. It is really come to light when our leachate goes up to the extent that it has this year, that we can put together a robust capital program down there at the wastewater plant, use the leachate money from the previous year, which would be this year, and apply it to next year's capital budget. So that way the plants are not paying out of their pocket for this, and the city's not paying out of their pocket for it, but we're using revenue that the plant itself made, and applying it back to the plant in hopes to also reduce operation costs, so that way we can keep the plant running more efficiently.
Right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank
No
you.
problem.
Oh, and Vice Mayor Parton. Vice Mayor Parton, did you need to continue?
No, I mean, if anybody else has a question from today's meeting, I mean, I can answer that. I think Ms. Pelham has her hand up. I don't know if that's for me, if that's just a comment about something else with the budget.
No, that was something else about the budget. I'm waiting to go around again. I was giving other people the opportunity.
Okay. Would it be all right if I asked a question real quick to Mr. Altman?
Please do.
For the class and compensation study, I guess there's two ideas that kind of come to mind with it. Is there a way that we can, and I know that you were talking about doing a regional effort, but is there a way to have I shouldn't say maybe all the localities, but a lot of the localities in this area chip in money to fund a class and compensation study for public safety officers? That way, it's not such a huge burden and expense to, each locality to individually pay for each one of these. And then, we have a bunch of money tied up in studies, as opposed to going towards fixing the problem that we know is before us. And if not, and that's not a feasible idea, is there a way to do some of this in-house in order to save money?
So to address the first part of your question, there may be a way to look at the public safety side regionally and try to fund that regionally, but that would not, that then only takes care of that piece. We would still have to look at everything outside of public safety with our class and comp study. So we would still have that expense to deal with. And again, we're very, very early in those conversations about not, the realization of poaching from each other or each other's employees. And it's just going to be a cycle that's going to go around the wheel. And Prince George is going to take some from us, and we're going to have to take some from someone else. And so we want to try to stabilize our workforces as much as possible. And we know the one thing that we're always competing on is salary. With regard to in-house, I think if we had a bigger staff, we could probably do some of it in-house, but we're kind of maxed out at capacity right now. And I don't think we have the ability to handle the whole class and comp study issue in-house on our own.
Okay. Even though, I know we're talking about, public safety for doing it regionally, is it even feasible to do a regional class and compensation study across the board for all different types of city employees that have corresponding positions over in the counties?
I don't know if we could do it across the board regionally. Like Dinwiddie is just implementing their first phase of their class and comp study, which they've adopted this year. So they've already done one. So they're not, they're probably not going to be interested in doing another study here right now. What our study will do is look at those positions in the region that we have in common and make sure that what we're offering from a salary perspective is in line with what's being offered across the board in the region. So to some degree, when we do one, we'll be looking at all of that, but I don't think across the board, cities and counties would probably do a regional class and comp study altogether. I think our thoughts about public safety would be a first step in that direction, because I don't believe one's ever been done here. And what we don't want to be in a position in is similar to what Henrico and Chesterfield were, where they're dueling with one another over who's going to have the top paid force in the region. That's where they're at, and they have the wherewithal to be able to do that. We know that we can't compete, and we don't want to really compete with each other. We know that's the reality. So I think an initial step towards maybe looking at something longer term regionally for more positions in public safety. But I think public safety would be probably the one thing that we could sit down and really talk about and maybe get some agreement on how to move forward. And it may be that part of that is looking at what everyone's got for their class and comp and trying to come up with a compromise salary within what the class and comps have shown us. But again, I think we're really early in that conversation. So I wouldn't want to say that we could do it and we may not be able to. And I know Dinwiddie's probably at this point may not be interested in a full scale study because they just finished and are beginning to implement the first phase of theirs this budget year.
Okay.
Okay. Vice Mayor Parton, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Can I ask a question, Mr. Altman?
Yes, ma'am.
When was the last, did we ever have a class and comp study? Did the city ever have a class and comp study?
Yes. So again,
When was that?
I can't remember if it was adopted in 16. I know when I got here in 18, I think we were implementing the last phase of what that class and comp study came out. So I don't know if it was adopted in 16 with phase 1, phase 2 in 17, and then phase 3. And then the last one we did was probably 16 or 17. And then prior to that, the last comp and class and comp I remember was the Palmer and Kay study, which was, well, quite a number of years
Prior
ago.
to 2016?
Oh no, that one would have dated back much further than that, probably 0607.
Okay, well, never mind. I don't want to even go back that far. So, do you have any recollection? I'm just asking because I need to understand this more. When the adoption for the phases, what were the phases that were, do you know the phases that were adopted?
I do not recall what the first couple of phases were before I got here. I know that a lot of times it's driven by affordability, what you can afford. I don't know if Mr. Dane's still on the line.
No, it's fine. We don't even have to do that. So I'm going to scratch that question. My next question is, where is that class and comp study located? And is it available to the council?
Oh, absolutely, you can get it to council.
Okay. All right. So that was done in 2016. Now in 2016, my other question is, right now we're under a compression and a band, right? And this is for all city employees?
Yeah, we're operating in pay bands right now.
Pay bands, okay. So was that when the class and comp study was done, was that the recommendation to go into a pay band?
So we adopted pay bands in, let's see, 2008, maybe.
Okay.
8 or 9 was when the manager at that time decided we were going to go to pay bands instead of using grade and step. And part of our issue is the part-time pay scale that we have now. That's still grade and step because that was done by Palmer and Kay back in 06, 07. And we haven't, when we did this last one, when Springstead did the last one in say 16, part-time salaries were not included in that class and comp study.
Okay, with this class and comp study that we want to get out, what is the end goal?
Well, the end goal is to make sure that our salaries are within market for our region and adjusting the part-time pay scale that we haven't looked at in over a decade. And then looking at potentially having a separate public safety pay scale. So that, and then some of those other items that would go into how you how that position, how you work the position within your HR manual. Because right now, when we did the last one, and I know Mr. Dane was here and some members of council, it seemed to be just solely looking at the dollars, the numbers. And we didn't look at the type of pay structure we had, pay bands versus grades and steps. We just looked at, from a market perspective, where are we? And we need to go back and look at it. I think, and as out of this comes a reliance on having career development ladders, and those career development ladders move you through like an old class, grade and step process. It moves you through that based on what you're doing. So I'd like to get back and look at how we're doing our class and comp, if we need to move away from pay bands and back to a more traditional grade and step. I think that's my goals for all of that, is to get us to market, look at how we're structured, and then also look at the part-time pay scale.
Mr. Altman, if I may, I wasn't involved in the class and comp. It was the manager, and I believe Gail was the HR director at the time. But regardless, you're correct in that it looked at just numbers. They didn't really look at structure. And lastly, if I remember, I don't remember what phase 3 was, but phase 1 was just moving the people who were well below the bottom of a grade into the proper grade. Phase 2 was to adjust people into a competitive range within those grades. And then I don't remember what phase 3 was, but I'm not sure if we ever implemented phase 3. I remember we went through those 2-year increments on phase 1 and phase 2 is all I remember.
So if we're talking about, I just wanted to understand because I think maybe it got a little convoluted with the class and comp study. The end goal for the class and comp study is to um, see where we are, see where the city is with their salaries, right?
Mhm.
Adjusting part-time and looking at the market and doing a pay scale. So there was a reason why we went into a pay band is what I'm saying. Is just like, is the pay band constricting I know it sounds like I'm going left, but I promise you, I'm tying this all together. When we're in the pay band and you're saying they're not getting the step increase, how does that work? Like, is an employee supposed to do an evaluation at the end of the evaluation, get a bonus, or what was the idea of a compression? Because obviously with the pay band system, there was probably a benefit with that. And I want to see if that is actually happening. So what is the positive of having the pay band? And why do we move from that to this? It's all going to come together, I promise.
Well, I don't know that I'm going to be able to give you the answer you're looking for. The manager at the time just decided this is what we're doing.
Okay.
We didn't have a big discussion. It was just, this is what we're doing. And
so can you explain to me what the pay band system is versus the
so
grade?
there's kind of a low grade, a low band, a middle band, and a high end band. So there's ranges. So let's just say 5,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 15, 15 to whatever. So you're in these bands, and you could end up with people with lots of service, but they're making the same thing as someone who comes in new because they're in the band, and the minimum salary for this position is $10,000. And we're not doing grades and steps, to move people and give a longevity benefit. You're stuck there. So you get people who have had lots of service that are close and tight with people who are just in new because we're in this band system. Plus, one of the things that I enjoyed when I was a department head is when we had grades and steps, department heads had flexibility in starting pay. So you could offer an applicant from step A to D. If you wanted to go to E, you had to go to the manager. Right now, if Mr. Dane wants to hire someone $1 more than the minimum, it's got to be approved for $1. So we're looking at how do we have a competitive pay structure? And unfortunately, I can't, like I said, really answer the question for you as to why we went to the band, because there really wasn't ever a reason in my recollection given why. It was just, this is what we're doing.
Okay, so if they do the employees do their own rating and within the band system, and can they receive a bonus?
No, we don't. The only time we can give a bonus is
they don't get awards, monetary awards or time off awards.
We don't give any monetary awards from an evaluation perspective unless council authorizes the COLA or a merit or a bonus. So that it would all that money is tied to council authorization.
Okay.
So we don't have the flexibility to just say, hey, Ms. Bennett did a great job this year. Let's give her $500.
Well, I mean, contingent upon me of a review,
Right.
because if you get a performance review and you went above and beyond and it was, exceptional or outstanding, there should be some type of, you're looking for a step increase, but at the same time, it's just like, I'm going to automatically get it. Where if we're here now, if we're already here, what is the benefit and what is the what can we do for employees that are in this pay band who say, hey, look, I come to work every day and this is my job. I go above and beyond. I mean, is there a performance? This is just all I'm asking, because I agree with this comp study, but I mean, even if we do evaluate what everyone else is doing on the outside, I mean, it's kind of like, what do we have in place now and why is it not working? So I'm just going to leave that now, and then Councillor Denton and then Councillor Pelham.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I'm sorry. The 5% COLA for the comp board positions, constitutional offices, and social services.
He's muffled.
Well, the other employees, do we have in this budget a COLA for the other employees of our city?
It's hard to understand you, Janice. You're going in and out and you're kind of muffled.
So if I understood and heard Ms.
No.
Denton correctly,
What was the question? I didn't understand either.
so she asked, there's a 5%, the state is giving a 5% COLA for comp board positions in the constitutional offices and the Department of Social Services. She asked if there was a COLA, a cost of living increase, included in this budget for all the other employees. And
what about them too?
Well, so the constitutional offices, the comp board positions in our constitutional offices and DSS are getting a 5% raise provided by the state. There is not, at this point, I had an idea hit me this afternoon while I was at the water renewal meeting on how we might be able to do this. But at this point, there is not a cost of living increase in this year's budget. So to give an order of magnitude, for the city to give all of its employees outside of these constitutionals and comp board state positions, a 5% increase would cost us $1.1 million. If we did a 2.5% increase for the year, that's about $550,000. And if we did that for, say, January through the end of the year, not the entire year, we're looking at $275,000. There may be a way, should council want to do that, and I feel this has probably been the most difficult thing for me in this budget, is the need to really want to provide our employees with a cost of living increase, knowing schools will be getting one. We have constitutionals and Department of Social Services that will be getting one, and knowing that Prince George is going to do 2%, Colonial Heights is going to do 2%, Chesterfield is doing merits, and Dinwiddie's doing 4%. I really would like to be able to do it. So one of the ways that we could do it is the positions that I proposed, which is this next page. That $266,000 goes away. And instead of adding positions, we take those dollars to reward our existing employees. Now, that's not going to cover the full, let's just say, I know we can't do the 5, but let's work in the realm of that 2.5 for easy numbers. That's that 550. If we wanted to do it, because when we receive, and I'm assuming council again is going to want to receive the American Rescue Plan Act money, those dollars can be used to replace lost revenue. Our capital side, where we utilize our sales, lodging, meals, those dollars, and our 295 money, which we just had a drop in 295 money last year, we could use those dollars to supplement capital this year with one-time project and expenses, and move some of those dollars back towards the operating fund to make up the difference and do a raise. So that's kind of I've been struggling with this issue because I feel horrible for our employees, knowing everyone in the city, with the exception of them, and then people around us, are going to be getting a raise, that we wouldn't be able to do it this year. But that's a way to do it should we want to take advantage of that. So to answer your question directly, Ms. Denton, no, there is not a raise in the budget, but there may be a way to do it should we want to explore that some more.
Okay. One other question in regards to the 5% COLA for the constitutional offices and social services. Does the city have to match that?
No, ma'am. No.
Okay.
And now what I'll say is, what in the budget, we fund the we fully fund positions within some of the constitutional offices. Those city funded positions don't get that money from the state. So if council wants to give all of those people in those offices 5%, that's another discussion that we've got to come back and have and make adjustments on. But at this point, none of the city positions outside of what the comp board is providing for, only the comp board positions within those constitutional offices are getting the 5%.
And you have that in this budget?
The 5% is in the budget, yes, ma'am.
It's in the budget. Okay.
Because that's money that we'll receive from the state.
And how much did you say additional would be if we do a 2% or 2.5% for the employees?
If we do a 2.5% for the employees for the whole year, that's going to cost us approximately $550,000.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
Councilor
again,
Hubbard and Councilor Randolph, and Councilor Gore.
thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Now, so you're saying the COLA that the comp, what? Oh, shoot, sorry. Stop. Can y'all hear that?
Yes.
I don't know how to stop it. Yeah.
Just ask. You can drown out the background noise.
Well, I guess while we're waiting for Councilor. Oh, there she goes. Okay. We'll just move on. Councilor Randolph.
Thank you.
Councilor.
And I don't want to belabor all of this too much because we've got still a lot to go over, but if I'm correct, and please tell me quickly if I'm not, but these 5% mandated state increases are something that we will have to pay starting next year, correct, Mr. Altman?
Well, if we would have to pay them if the comp board doesn't increase their salary range. So this year is being paid by the comp board. Right. What it looks like next year, we could be left holding the bag, but I would hope that they would then increase the base level by that 5%, and we wouldn't have to pick up that cost.
Yeah, because that's my concern, is that these mandated required 5% increases that we're having to pay. And I'll remind everybody that the school also wants to do a class and comp study for their employees. And I too would like to see our employees at least get something. And now we've got constitutional officers or offices and social services that the comp board is giving a 5% increase. If we get left with the same structure that we have this year, then the ability to pay that is going to leave a big hole for us that we have to fill next year. Has that, to your knowledge, ever come about that they've paid the first year and then not increased their structured pay in order to make up the difference? In other words, do you think we can count on them increasing, the comp board increasing theirs to make this part of their structured payment?
You, yeah, that's a loaded question. You want me
Yes,
to
I know
count
it
on the
is.
state government? Okay.
Yeah,
I would, my experience, if I recall, has been that they typically do increase that base level pay.
Okay.
Now, some of us have been around when the times got tough in
Mhm.
08,
Yep.
that the state asked for us to pay them. So
Yep.
they, basically we had to give them money back for those local services that were being provided. And we
Yeah,
had
I
to
remember
literally
that.
strike a check back to the state of a couple $100,000 because they were falling short because they fell in hard times. So, typically it will increase, but we've seen some extraordinary times where things have gone the other way. So it's really hard to say. We know this year, state had a lot more money than they thought they were going to have.
Yeah.
Primarily, the one benefit of the pandemic has been the internet sales tax. That's shot through the roof, and no one, really saw that, but that's been a huge source of money this year. I don't know that I see that slowing down a whole lot, just because even as we open back up, I think people are kind of in that mode of doing online shopping with Amazon or your groceries or whatever it may be.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, I think the state will ratchet it up, but again, it's hard to say year to year because, they have, as they watch their revenues rise and fall during a year, they have a tendency to kind of become Chicken Little at times and panic. And then 3 months, a quarter later, everything's looking great. So,
Yeah, and I just wanted to make that clear to everybody that could happen.
Yep.
But I'm sorry, I didn't hear in your explanation, if we cut the budget requests of some of these staff positions, which there's one in particular that I'm really backing, simply because I want to see the rental inspection program change very much to give quality housing to everybody. How did you say we were going to get those positions?
So I wasn't suggesting we would get the positions. What I said, if we wanted to do a raise, the positions would go away, and you would use that
with
200.
nowhere else to go for that money to get those positions.
I'm sorry.
They would just completely go away. Those positions we just would have to give up.
Yes, that's what I was looking at. With the exception of the lab technician at Water Renewal, that's an enterprise fund and it doesn't have an impact on the general fund.
Right.
But those positions there, we have in the budget about $338,000 to play with. So these positions are part of that, what would be that 338. So if we took all that away and we just said, let's look at using the American Rescue Plan Act monies, which we know we've seen decreases in revenue that fund our capital tremendously. Use these dollars to replace some of those dollars and move some of that back to operating, then we could probably find the difference to get the 550 that we would need to do a 2.5% year long for the whole year increase.
And there's still discussions we have to have about schools and the amount of money.
Yes.
They keep versus give back to us. Okay, thank you. I'll stop and let somebody else have a chance. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Randolph. Councilor Pelham is back.
Yes, thank you.
Councilor
Yes, I was first, how much was the medical benefit again for paying the employees' medical costs?
So the city absorbed the increase of $53,000 to hold the employees at no harm. So at this point, assuming the budget is where it is, employees won't get a raise, but they won't have a decrease in July because of an increase in healthcare costs. They won't see their pay go down. They will still be making the same.
No, I thought it was more than that, because what we could have considered was giving the employees a decent COLA. Let the ones that decide to want to buy the higher end health care or have usable money in the COLA raise, they could make that decision therein. But 53,000, I thought it was more than that.
Well, there was when council authorized changing the plans, that's when our cost dropped. It was 110,000 and some change. And if we'd have kept everything the same, but we changed plans, which allowed us to save some money on the premium. And then we're going to hold our employees harmless, so they're not making any less money in their paycheck because of any healthcare changes. So that's the kind of the catch-22 is I've experienced, and I'm sure some of us all have experienced, where you get a raise and you're all excited because you got a 2% raise, but your healthcare went up 5% and you end up making less money because your health insurance went up more than your raise. So my objective was not to do that to the employees, to make sure they're at a minimum making the same thing July 1 as they were making June 30th. And if you can give them a COLA, that means they're actually truly getting a raise and not having that raise absorbed by an increased healthcare cost.
Well, okay. The other question was, with the wastewater enterprise zone making money, and is that considered a profit for the wastewater enterprise zone?
The enterprise fund, it's a profit. Yes, ma'am. That profit is shared by the commission. So the city gets a piece of that, but also the other commission members that are there at the table. So Ashland, Advanced 6, West Rock, and the water company all get a piece of that.
But is it anything they get that we get by us, that we get from them? They got to pay something. I mean, I guess it's a deal where when our CAFRs is updated, they have to pay us something else. What is that?
Well, they pay a monthly bill.
Yeah.
The leachate money is profit outside of that we're making. And that's what Vice Mayor Parton has been working the past couple years to get the industry that are on the commission to allow that profit to be spent to make capital improvements at the water renewal facility. So therefore the city, because as we do capital, we all participate in the cost of that capital.
I know,
but this would allow, those dollars would allow us to do capital and not have to pay out of pocket for it, because we're using the revenue coming in to the facility, not having to go into the city's coffers or their coffers. It's found money, if you will, and allowing that profit to pay for improvements on the site.
Okay, what is our profit for this year? Your Parton can answer that.
10 million. It's over $10 million so far this year, and we're not done. We have a couple more months to go.
That's one. It might be 12 million.
Yes, ma'am. Last year it was almost 7 million, I think, if I remember correctly, Mr. Parton.
I think it was around 6.5.
Yeah.
So if it's $12 million and it's 6 people divided by 6 entities.
Mm-hmm.
So in that $2 million, and you're saying, Mr. Parton, that those projects can't be put off any longer? Because wouldn't that be money that we could utilize to do other things with?
You can always defer maintenance projects. The problem is, are you willing to accept the liability and the consequences if for some reason the plant shuts down and starts either emitting contaminated wastewater into the rivers and then having to pay that environmental cost that goes with it? And
no, well, if they do that, they'll be violating DEQ and all those other regulations. They would have to pay, wouldn't they? Why would we have to pay?
The wastewater commission itself, as the whole entity, would have to pay. Yeah, the idea.
We're the permittee. The city's the permittee. Yeah. So
okay, I understand that.
We would pay and then charge them for whatever cost. Let's say there's a an upset at West Rock that causes a problem for us, and we release contaminant into the river, DEQ is going to come to us because we're the point source polluter. They're going to fine us, but then we're going to have to fine West Rock.
And we have to sue them if they decide not to pay.
Then that's when Ms. Robinson gets involved.
So that is a consideration too. I know you don't like to defer costs for whatever, and if the plants did this and if and that, but that is a consideration for monies to be utilized.
Yes, ma'am. And
Not
that's
for
one-
so much as, not as for COLA, because that's a reoccurring expense, but.
Right. And I mean, there has been some discussions about that, trying to utilize maybe some of this additional leachate money for other projects. I guess how you look at it is first, try to get the plants on board with doing it, because if they're not on board doing it, then it makes it a lot more difficult in order to, get them to say, okay, now that we've upgraded the plant, let's try to utilize some of this leachate money to go towards fixing drainage issues, or going towards upgrading our network capacity within the city, utilizing it for other things. You try to always tie it back into a benefit of some sort with the plant, so they have some sort of buy-in with it. And it just let everybody know that if money is credited back to the city, I believe the city's portion is only 18%. The other 82% would end up going to the other industry. That's why I've just been a big proponent of trying to keep the money there at that plant, doing those upgrades.
And part of that is Mr. Parton knows from today, like we had with nitrogen, there's a phosphorus issue that's coming down the way, and it's going to reduce our phosphorus loading, which means we'll have another project. But we're looking at utilizing some of these funds to target capital projects that help us reduce our phosphorus loading and solids. That will, maybe we can get to the number. I don't know that we can really ever get to the number that DEQ is going to give us, but targeting these dollars to spend towards some of those projects to reduce that burden on us as we go down the road, because otherwise we could be looking at, and I think Mr. Parton, correct me if I'm wrong, we've talked about a project in the order of $50 to $60 million to address phosphorus.
One of the latest budget figures that Mr. Byerly presented or mentioned at one of our meetings was that because of the cost of materials and labor going through the roof, that we could be looking anywhere north of $80 million.
So I guess the thought there is if you can utilize that leachate money to offset burden and cost to the citizens, then that's kind of the effort to try to do that. But again, as Mr. Parton has indicated, that's something that we'd have to get the buy-in of the other commission members.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Councilor Moore.
Yes, I just want to make sure he puts some information out there and ask for staff to help develop a timeline for the classic comp study for everyone. So just off of my quick search, and I remember this whole process to answer some of the questions that was raised earlier. July 2017, council adopted the class and comp study, and we went with option 1. And option 1 was to do the minimum to bring up 26% of staff up to a certain pay grade. That was done in July 2017. At the time, we were notified after the fact that the constitutional offices were not included. I'm trying to go back to my notes, but I know that in 2018, council in a budget, I think it was $20,000, it was a $50,000, it was a small amount like that, that we actually incorporated into our budget to be able to take care of the constitutional offices. So we had to get that date. But in 2018, in March, is when council adopted a separate pay increase for the police department at the request of Chief Cohane. And that was for almost everyone in the police department to be moved up to market within the region. And that was in March 27th of 2018. And I do recall council also putting money into the fire department to work on their career succession plan. And we put more money into the budget for them to go to conferences and get additional training. And they were tasked with developing a succession plan. So that would be a note to follow up with where that is. But I also have notes that the class and comp study, it was also created to plan for future positions that we have yet to have. And so they were also tasked with, in looking at the presentation, with developing a maintenance system for staff to be able to still keep up with the market. So I guess the follow would be what became of that. And then looking at my notes, 2018 is when it was on the agenda to get a quote from Springstead for the employee satisfaction. And then there's work session requests in 2018, 2019 to complete the class and comp study implementation for the pay scales, the employee satisfaction, and the HR manual itself. So I can provide these notes for staff to try to help build a timeline, but for everyone's knowledge, it was adopted July 11th, 2017. Police was adopted March 27, 2018. I haven't identified when the class and comp was updated for the constitutional officers in the police department, the fire department. But I'll send you the class and comp study that I found in my email so everyone has that. That's all. So if that might help March and Charlie, sorry, Mr. Altman and Mr. Dane, piece this together so everyone can have be brought up to speed for the counselors who were not here for those conversations and staff.
Thank you, Counselor Boer. Counselor Denton, you have your hand raised. Okay. I do have a.
And I have another point of view, if I can.
Yes.
Yeah. The issue with the COLA, if the constitutionals and DSS and those persons getting a COLA 5%, whatever raise we decide, if we decide to give our employees, you're going to ensure that they don't also get that, correct?
Yes, ma'am. We wouldn't double dip. No, ma'am.
Okay. That, I mean, that happened before.
Yeah, no.
Stop it, but it didn't happen.
No, we would want to make sure. Yeah, we would address the positions that aren't getting that raise. We wouldn't give the, if we gave 2.5, we wouldn't give someone 7.5. We would not.
Yeah. Before you came, DSS got another raise from the state and got a raise from us too, or whatever it was we were doing, and they should.
One of the things about our class. Yes, ma'am. So that would be one of the things about our class and comp. I have been a proponent of, since I've been here, DSS deciding if they're state employees or city employees.
You decide for them.
So they've decided that they want to take advantage of the 5%. So, and I'll put this out there now. So if we do a class and comp, it's my intention not to include DSS, because they're going to go with the state pay. So if they're going to go with the state pay, I don't want to do a class and comp and then adjust their pay because of our local class and comp, which then gives them another raise. So they need, I've told Mr. Spicer, since I've been here, every year when we have this discussion around budget time, you need to decide, are you a state agency or are you a local agency? Are you going to be a deviating or non-deviating department? Because once you make that decision, we're there. This year, he wants to take the 5% raise, so he's going to be in the state comp system.
Man.
Because I'm not going to go back and forth. Whoever's given the best deal, that we can't do that.
Oh, Ms. Pelham, are you?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. No, that's it. Thank you.
So I have to, I'm going to I'm going to just harp on this. And I understand what the comp study is supposed to do, but I want to make sure that that the city is also doing what they're supposed to do to show value to our employees. And I know that our employees go above and beyond, and they are the face of the city. I feel like we should look at because if you do a comp study, right, you're like, okay, well, this is your job description. This is all you're supposed to do. But then we have individuals who have a position and it's like, hey, guess what? Somebody else left, but we need you to do this job until we can hire someone else. So we have an individual that's probably doing 2 job duties, and then it's like they're doing it for so long, they merge together. So, and they're able to do that job duty, right? With the skills. So now my thing is, hey, let's let us as a city of Hopewell show value to our employees. How can we reevaluate all the positions within our city, right? Look at those positions, see exactly, okay, is this something that they actually do? Because our workforce has really, the way we work now has really transitioned. And if we're saying that we need a position to do rental inspections, right? Or we need that, well, look, we need to start council's job is to start figuring out what policies we're going to put in place. What policies is going to defend that and make it easier and seamless? We're doing, it's a big disadvantage for our city employees if we're going to go out there and do a comp study, but we're giving them old information, knowing that because our workforce has transitioned since 2008 and that job roles have actually transitioned as well. And we have individuals who have taken on other roles and responsibilities, that needs to be also documented when these class and comp studies are done. Also, with that being said, I would also like to reevaluate how our service contracts are being done. Because if we have employees here that can do it, we need to take a look at that. That way we're not buying redundant services that we don't need, okay? And I would really like that to be a part. If we are going to do a comp study, which I totally agree with, we will need, as a city, to reevaluate each individual's job roles and make sure that, hey, look, this is exactly what they're doing. Oh, we don't even do this anymore. This was added there. That way they can get a fair and justified, class and compensation for that. We can't just expect somebody to take our old information and say, oh yeah, you know what, just do that. Hey, City of Hopewell, I'm asking council, we have to look at our policies and procedures where we can drill down on them. I really, really would like to. And if you're saying that 2.5% for this year is $550,000, you know what? I can tell you, I would take that to 5%, because there are so many people that I meet within the city, no matter what, when the lights go out, anything, I see them out here. I go into City Hall, I see them there. We have great employees, but if we don't show value for them and if we don't speak up for them and defend them, everybody else around us is going to get raises. And we're going to start kicking the can down the road saying, well, we'll think about a comp study, or we might do this. No, we need to focus on that, focus on what we have, our established employees, and go from there. So that's my spiel for today. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for your support.
Councilor Gore?
Yeah, sorry. On the page with the positions, 2 things comes up. We discussed bringing in the billing for the sewer and trash in-house. Where are we at with that discussion? Because we really do need to get rid of that contract that we have with the third-party biller.
So that's going to be part of the proposal that I bring back to y'all for CAFR and implementation outside of the budget. That's going to be part of that.
Okay, my other question is, we are working on public Wi-Fi. How is that going to be impacted with our IT department if we're going to have public Wi-Fi? Like, who is going to help make sure that that operates?
So that's a discussion actually that Ms. Manker and I have had. We're debating. So I put the munis administrator position here as a recommendation, but we've had a conversation that potentially, given our launch of public Wi-Fi, that an individual to kind of help desk that issue alone may be more important at this point in time, given where we are. So we've had had that conversation, but that's going to be an issue. The more that we get into that realm, we're going to have people who they're not going to be able to submit a help desk request like we do internally, but are going to have questions. They're going to call, how can I get on? I'm having this issue. And we know that's there. So it's an issue that we're going to have to address. And like I said, right now, I put the administrator position in. The last conversation that Dr. Manker and I had, I think there was kind of a 50-50 split on which one might be more important today as opposed to down the road. We might be in a position with Wi-Fi coming on that kind of, we'll call it a broadband administrator, might be the position that we really need to look at. But
wouldn't you say the same thing for the munis administrator? I know I advocated for this last budget cycle once we learned that there was a need for it, because as we talked about recently, we have munis modules that the city has purchased but haven't implemented or made live yet. We have the issue with the schools trying to get them on munis. We have issues with onboarding staff to understand the system. We have issues with making sure it's updated and having IT help people, because that's not their subject matter expertise. It is to keep the system running, but not be involved at the layers that some departments need. I don't see us not having this and trying to really address our financial problems. Do you see what I'm saying?
yeah, well, I mean, the reality comes into money. I mean, we've got to operate within the revenues we have, and we don't have enough money. We can eliminate the communications positions in PD and fund a broadband and a munis administrator. We could eliminate the inspector and fund it. The conversion of the 2 part-time positions to a full-time position really is a wash. So, I mean, we could do it, but we just have to pick and choose. And I place my emphasis on the munis administrator, knowing what we're about to go through with the upgrade to our system, looking at bringing on the billing system. So, that's where I thought the need was going to be. But
the reason I'm asking is because if I'm not understanding correctly, please let me know. In reality, we're looking at this class and comp study, we're looking at salaries, and we're looking at these positions all being subject to consideration. So wouldn't it all be like on one pager for everyone to think about everything that's on the table in consideration for what to keep, take away, reduce, or things of that nature? Because I wonder if administrator for munis, and I get the whole need about doing the class comp study, I do support that as well. I mean, I think I've demonstrated that by trying to get it addressed the last couple of years, and then you compare that to where we are financially as an organization in terms of oversight and needing to really address that. Is a class and comp study outweigh having someone come on board to get our modules in place and support the finance department and IT department? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and there may be a way to do more than one of these things at the same time. So again, going back to the funding that we're going to receive from the federal government, you could look to utilize those dollars, say, towards a class and comp, which is a one-time cost expense. I wouldn't want to use those dollars for positions because it's going to be reoccurring. So you might be able to do a class and comp, bring on the positions, but not do the COLA, or do the COLA, do the class and comp, but not bring on the positions. So there's a mixing bowl that when you put that in there as an element, we might be able to accomplish more than what's laid out. But yeah, the decision points are going to be positions, class and comp, or a COLA. And again, today, the COLA piece, the way to potentially do that kind of hit me today at the regional wastewater meeting. As I was thinking it through on the way back a little bit, I thought, there's an aha moment of how we might be able to do that should council be willing to entertain that. So this is what I was moving forward with. And the decision point on the class and comp and how to fund that if we had support for it. So
when you come back, can you give us like I don't know if you remember this. I don't know how many years ago it was, probably like 3 years ago. It wasn't done recently, but when we had all different options presented, where we had the mix and match, so people can see the mix and match. And then we can go kind of like, okay, we like option 1 or we like option 2, but we like the bottom of option 1. That's helpful to see the different scenarios so that we can make an informed decision. Because I definitely think that we need to put on the table the broadband person and so look at the administrator. That's just my personal opinion, because we're going to run into that problem and we don't want people complaining about this. And it's a great project, great idea. I don't want that to be hindered, but we direly need someone to be in the munis position as well. Yeah. So if you can do that, if council is not opposed to that, that was really helpful the last time we did something like that. And then with your different scenarios, your ideas on how we can make these things happen. But with the position I'm talking about with billing, you said you're going to bring that to us, but why wouldn't that still be considered a reoccurring revenue?
Well, it will be, but what we'll be able to do with the billing position is because we won't be paying the third-party biller, we're actually end up saving money on that. So the contract that we have for the third-party biller is going to be able to pay for the position.
Okay. All right. Well,
but you're correct. My thought this evening was to see if there was support amongst council for items to explore, because I didn't want to. If there wasn't an appetite to talk about how to do a raise, then I wasn't. But if there is, I'm more than happy to bring back that option. I just didn't want to make an assumption that that's something y'all would want to do without having the conversation.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Councilor Gore. We need to do what she suggested and give us all the options, lay it out with costs and where the money's coming from. That would be perfect.
Thank you.
Happy to do it.
Councilor Randolph and then Councilor Denton.
That was my comment. I just wanted to say that I was supportive, very much so, what Councilor Gore was suggesting. I think that we need to look at all options here, how much raises will cost in different percentages, how much, the class and comp is going to cost and where it's going to come from, and all of these positions, what they would cost and where the money would be coming from, and et cetera, et cetera. We just need to have all those options shown to us so that we can all discuss them and pick and choose what we feel is the right choices for the city at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Denton. Councilor Denton, your mic is muted.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I agree with both Councilor Randolph and Councilor Gore. I do want to see where in this budget we could possibly get the $550,000 to give our employees that 2.5% increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Altman, I do have a question. Does the class and comp study can they come in and reevaluate these positions as per my last statement and the job rules and duties, or is that something that we have to do in-house?
No, we could bring in part of our RFP, and request for services could be an evaluation of our existing positions, their current job roles, and if what the current job description actually matches what the employee is doing. Because we do have some positions that take on additional responsibilities over time, and then it kind of just becomes part of that person's job. But we got to look at, are we actually compensating them for that versus what the job description says? And if we need to change that job description, so that certainly could be part of the overall process.
So that's where I'm going to say right there, and I agree with the raise, but also to look at reevaluating the job roles to make sure that our employees are being compensated as such, and that if the class and comp study can do that, if you would be able to place that also as an RFP, something that we can do within that class and comp. And then that way, not only that, we might see an increase or in these positions, and that will probably take care of itself. But in the long run, we do have to value what our people do and speak up for them, because our employees do so much and outside of their scope as well.
Yes, ma'am.
May I speak, Mayor Bennett?
Yes, Counselor Holloway.
First, I would like to thank our city manager for looking into the options in which we can give our city employees an increase. Because all you have to do is look at how adamant they are. They come to work. They support the city of Hopewell, and you can take a look at the years of service that they have, that the employees have supported the city of Hopewell. So I am in support of giving to the city employees. Thank you, Mr. Altman.
Thank you, Ms. Holloway.
Counselor Denton.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will lower it.
There are no more hands, so.
Okay, so I'll move on. Oh wow, look at that. Okay, let's see. There we go. All right, going backwards. So these are the notable changes in the budget, and the clerk's office, the part-time position that's currently assigned there, that's actually going to ultimately be moved to the manager's office, not in the clerk's office. That's in addition to the clerk and the assistant clerk. But for council's knowledge, as you're looking towards hiring a clerk and assistant clerk, there's about $110,000 in the budget currently for the upcoming year to be able to hire a clerk, and then the clerk to hire a deputy clerk. Increase in the city attorney's budget with regard to service contracts. Manager's office, we have an economic development incentive payment that's there, but that's offset by the removal of the Office on Youth from last year's budget. So there's only a minor increase as opposed to the full increase. HR, we had staff turnover, so we had an increase in some salary and benefits there when we hired new staff. Finance, these audit costs for the 2 audits and CAFR support for getting the upcoming year.
I ask a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What are we still paying lease costs for the Office on Youth building?
I know, ma'am. I believe that lease cost, or the lease there, I want to say ended, and I can't remember the month that it ended.
You don't have to tell me. Just can you look it up and let us know when it ended? Because that's revenue saved as well, isn't it?
It
Yes,
ended
ma'am.
in December. December was the last payment we made.
December. Okay, so that won't be captured on this sheet with the personnel, but somewhere else, or would it?
Well, it's what's minused out of the manager's office budget, if you will. We're not paying that anymore. That's not included in that number, that offset there in that line. It says offset by Office on Youth removal. So last year when we did the budget, when we adopted the budget, we also transferred the salary for the youth coordinator as part of that. But we still had dollars on our side. Now all of those dollars are gone. So all of that's a savings, if you will, now that we had remaining in the budget from last year.
Okay, so savings like that, could that be something that could be transferred into that COLA mix, even though small pennies do make dollars, I guess?
Well, it's really been distributed throughout these increases that we have in the budget already. So, but we'll be able to come back with options for you guys to how to do that, certainly. But I would say that what we saved in the Office on Youth has already been distributed in service contracts in the attorney's office and HR and these other line items.
So are these savings? I'm confused. Is this $29,000 for human resources? Was that an increase in salary or was that saving?
These are all increases
The
that we
next
had.
year? But somebody got a raise or something? I mean,
We had 2 people leave, and when we hired people in, they were hired in at a higher salary than the previous people.
oh yeah. How y'all do that without? I thought council had to approve salary increases,
No,
change of positions like that.
we didn't. Well, we didn't change the positions. The salaries are within grade and within the range. So we
So
utilize.
you gave a higher range.
No,
Job normally depicted.
no, ma'am. The salary range is there. People were hired within the established salary range per the last compensation study. So the person that was there before was making less than the person that came in, because you may have had the person that's coming in that you're recruiting may have been making the same salary before, but and obviously everyone is moving, so they're looking for a benefit or a raise to make the move. So there was increases in salary and benefits as a result of that. And that's a total of increase and salary and benefit. It isn't just salary, that's salary and benefit. So that's salary, long-term, short-term disability, health insurance, VRS, FICA, all of those benefits, that's all rolled up into that one number. So the salary increases aren't going to be that significant, but you've got all the benefit increases that go along with those salary increases.
And by the same token, in the city clerk's position, you're saying that $110,000 would hire both a clerk and a deputy clerk?
That's what we have in the current salary line item, full-time salary line item in the clerk's office budget. Yes, ma'am.
For 110 grand. And
yes, ma'am.
That's reduced. That's a significant decrease, isn't it, for both of them?
No, ma'am.
And benefits?
No, that number is not inclusive of benefits.
Oh, I know. I know. I figured as much. So that's what I'm saying. That it should be inclusive, though, shouldn't it?
Now, what we're just trying to say here is council has up to $110,000 available in salary money. Benefits are in different line items that you can divvy that up however you wish when you go to hire a clerk. And then the remaining amount of money would go towards deputy or an assistant clerk.
All right, thank you.
My question is, Ms. Altman, what is when someone leaves and then we hire someone to replace them in that position? Prior to that person leaving, did they have the opportunity to meet that goal or that pay range that you were offering, the higher range that was offered to the employee who replaced them to do the same duties?
No.
Okay, so
we wouldn't know what that was. If you work for me and you leave, I don't know what I'm going to hire the next person at yet. And typically my position has been consistently, if you're looking and you get a job offer somewhere else, don't come and leverage me to get more salary. Congratulations and good luck. Because I'm not going to get into the game with employees of going out and getting a job and trying to leverage me to pay them more money. And then they go do it again and again and again. I understand we have valuable employees, but at the same time, if someone's typically looking for a job to leave, there's other reasons beyond their salary and other things. So my position has always been, I personally would never leverage an employer to make more money. If I've applied for a job and I'm accepting it for a reason.
That's not what I was asking. What I was actually asking, if we have that availability for that job role, right? And that person is doing that position and they're doing an exceptional job, are they banded just to what they're making? Is there is there an increase in that? Even if you're doing a pay band, it's just like high, low, whatever. Like if there's a pay band and that was a medium pay band, and then, somebody comes in and gets a hire. So I just wanted to understand that part of it because,
So we have employee Y, and that employee is an exceptional employee and is taking on additional duties. So there's a change in their job function. They can submit a request. A department head can submit a request for us to review a change in the position, and if that change based on those equates to an increase in the grade of the position, and then ultimately the pay range.
so if that position is changed in any way, does it have to come back to council?
No, that's done internally.
Okay.
But we don't really have a mechanism aside from COLAs or merits to reward, but just a typical high performer that doesn't take on anything else.
Okay, that's just
at this point.
interesting that someone, that's why that is great to have this comp study. Because if someone is doing an exceptional job and extra duties, I just don't understand why they couldn't have that option to go higher within that pay band.
Well,
So
and
like, we said, low is like, let's say 5 to 10,000. Medium is 10 to 15. And let's say high is 15 to 20. But you have somebody let's say we have somebody medium and they're 10 to 15. But that employee who has is making 11,000, right? They're doing everything possible. I mean, but what is the benefit for them to continue to stay within this pay band? It has to be something that allows them to move within this pay band. And, I just wanted to know if that was something with that, or, am I missing something?
Right. So
That's where I was getting at, not like, hey, if you leave, why didn't you offer this? I don't want you to offer someone. I want to know these people who are doing exceptional jobs, and they have this pay band. How can we move them around within the pay band?
Okay. So we do offer people the opportunity to get an adjustment if they're taking on additional duties beyond what's in their current job description. The only time that we do anything for employees that are in, just doing their normal job, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do and only what I'm supposed to do. I haven't taken anything else on, but I do that really well. That typically comes in the form of a merit pay increase that we would propose to council. So, and I've been here in the past where we did a total increase of 5%. 2 was COLA, and 3 you were eligible up to a 3% merit increase, and that was solely based on job performance. So we haven't done merits probably in a long 10 or more years. But that gets at rewarding the overachieving employee because they become then eligible for the higher end of that merit because it's completely based on performance, not on just moving everybody up equally. But if you would like for the salary and CAS and comp to provide a mechanism to reward people, we can certainly look at that. Mayor Bennett?
Her microphone is muted. Do you want us to go until she jumps back in?
Or
I don't have my hand raised and Councilor Plum. I know this is her, same one.
Ms. Pelham, do you have
I can't.
You're back.
Okay. Yes. Councilor Gore, you have your hand up?
Yeah, okay, sorry. So I I have a question on, I think he was on the slide with finance. But the discussion prompted me to have another question. One, I will share that the state, we do 3% merit increases. And kind of like what Mr. Altman said, is 3% and your supervisor has it submitted, then it has to go through like this whole chain of custody type thing. But that's also to reduce favoritism and certain people being able to get raises and versus others not. So it's merit based and the cap on it, but then pretty much you get your raise when the state gives you a COLA increase. That's the downside of being a public employee, but at the same time you have job security. So the thing that when the chair was speaking, I thought her question was something differently. So I'm glad she clarified it, because it made me want to ask the question in regards to advertising. So take, for example, if an employee leaves and they're at 103, let's say they're $100,000 after like 12 years of service. We're not going to hire a replacement at 99, are we? Do you see what I'm trying to say? Because the equitable part of it, meaning that's after all those years of service. And if it's on the high end of the market, why are we starting someone off at the high end? Can you answer that question? I'm not saying that's being done, but that is a concern that I have.
So one, we'd look at what that range is to begin with. You know, is it 90 to 150 and the person has been here and it's just because we haven't been given COLAs, they're stuck at 100? Or is it that the range is 60 to 100 and they're at the top end? So let's take that one. If they're at the top end, we're going to probably advertise a range within up to midpoint to see. We got to look at what's the market paying, and we want to evaluate that position. So is that position doing what we want it to do, or are there other things that we really want out of this position that we need to make some adjustments to? So are we looking for, and let's just say
a credential or something like that. I think
or, you know, let's say we've been, and I'll say that, I mean, I'm not being, we've been doing the same thing forever, right? And suddenly we have an opening and we say, you know, it's probably time that we really elevate this position and get the professional that we really want to get in the position and move it a little bit and to help our organization more, take it a little bit further. So in that instance, we reevaluate the position, and in reevaluating the position and what those credentials may be that currently we're not asking for. You know, if March has this credential or that credential, but we say, you know what, to really this position to really help us move the needle in the organization, we need qualified and credentialed people. Then we'll look at that and make an adjustment, and then that probably moves the needle on where we're starting pay at. But if it's just the same position doing the same thing, we're probably going to advertise starting salary and midpoint at the highest, and try to bring somebody in as little cost as possible. But we've had a couple of instances where we've made conscious decisions that we want to elevate that position and really move the needle in that department on what that position does. And we most recently did that with our shop supervisor in Public Works. We looked at that and said, we really need to have a fleet maintenance supervisor as opposed to someone who's just a shop maintenance supervisor. We want to elevate that position and get a little bit more broader skill set in that individual. So we made the secondary choice. We kind of moved the needle the other way.
So I know that we're going to have other conversations about this class of comp whenever the time is, but I'll just put out there that same conversation, you know, when HR looks over and gives the recommendations for the budget, to look at that internally with staff that we currently have. Like, everybody knows I work for a state agency. They just came down and said, what other training or certification do you want to be able to do your job better? And so we got to pick which training we wanted to get certified for, so that way we can increase like our skills. And so that helps move the needle with your current staff, and then also gives them some more reason to be, you know, retained as an employee. So I'm just throwing that out there. But the real question that I had was, you were on the finance slide and you said a 309. So I know we had the emergency procurement with Robinson, Farmer and Cox, and it was for the audit. So is this a new cost? Like, what, can you explain what this is for?
So this is going to be costs. So it's another, let's just assume Robinson, Farmer and Cox, the next audit, that cost. And so there's two audits. The audits were 130,000. So there's, money there and for our CAFR support piece.
So I thought they were contracted out to do, what year did they contract out to end? I don't know off the top of my head.
Council limited us to 18.
Okay, so this is moving forward.
Yes.
Okay. And this part-time person for real estate is to do the assessments? I thought should be done. Is that what that is?
Well, so they've asked for, they asked for a part-time position. There was a part-time position created during the year because we did the assessment in-house. And when you had your assessors in the field, there was no one minding the store to answer the phone and doing data entry. So we added a part-time position during the current year to assist them, as opposed to contracting the audit out again to do that audit in-house. Not audit, I'm sorry, appraisal, the assessment. Assessment work, my apologies on the audit. I'm looking at the line above. So the last time we had a citywide reassessment done, we contracted it out. And I can't remember the name of the company that did it. They came and presented to council. I said, this go around, not going to pay someone. We paid them to give us a baseline. We should be able to handle this with our staff. That's why we have multiple people in the office should be able to do our real estate appraisal work and field assessment work. So, as opposed to spending, the 100,000 or more again on a contract, we added a part-time position in the department to do admin work and answer the phone while our field appraisers were out doing the field work for this year's reappraisal.
But did they get the software upgrades they needed? Because they were on paper, and I know that they talked about needing to get tablets and software to make this electronic. So are they still on paper, or have we shifted them to be able to be more efficient?
We haven't shifted them yet. I think there was a desire to get all of their data updated. So I think we had a conversation about doing building footprints and those things. So all of that data is being updated, and the assessor wants to transition to doing the electronic tablets once her data is all done.
Okay. Two other quick questions. The voter registration, the training, did you verify that was in-person training, like with the state, not something virtual? And then the other question is, looking at the packet, there's like service contract or consulting costs. Can we get information about what that is for all of the departments that just have that listed?
Yep.
Okay. But the training, do you know that answer?
I don't know that offhand if it's in person or virtual.
Okay.
But I'll find out.
All right, cool. Because I'm only asking because we reduced.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I don't know. We had, I don't know how many of y'all know. So legislative days here, usually you pay, you go, you have lunch, you do all that.
Yeah.
We still had to pay this year, even though we didn't get a lunch. We still had to pay to go to do virtual legislative day. And I know in some instances there are some registration fees, but I'll verify whether the training is in person. And I know the bulk of that number is our rent cost, the new facility.
Okay. And I think Ms. Robinson said she can answer the question about hers now.
Ma'am, Mayor Bennett, may I answer that question? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So my service contracts are increased to cover the cost associated with my office taking over the city code and the city code updates with MuniCode. Since we've been making our amendments and working with them, we get bills in the neighborhood of $4,000 plus from MuniCode for this purpose. So most of that money is assigned to MuniCode. The rest of the money in that line item would be to cover our annual or monthly subscription cost to Westlaw, and that's the online database from which I do my legal research. So those are the two components of our service contract budget line item. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I had my hand up.
Can we just get off the fucking phone?
Well, I don't know who said that, but Counselor Pelham.
Yes, and in the finance arena, what was the name of that audit? The full-time auditor position that we requested 1 year. Is that
Internal auditor.
yeah, what is that position? Is that position you're talking about under finance?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay, this is just for the audits to catch up. But is it for the audits to catch up?
Yes, ma'am. This is the CAFR support team that we have through VML VACO.
I mean, what are they doing? Are they on board? But I mean, I understand it's like everybody getting paid, but we ain't getting no reports that anything's further along. I don't. And they paid another $300,000, and they haven't even.
So on the city side, our work on 18 is done. We've already begun work on 19 and some work on 20's CAFR. That's what
Some, that could be one. What is some? Define some. I have to ask you.
Well, we've begun work on fixed assets in 20 and what we can do work on. We're working on getting our information done as we're waiting for the 18 CAFR to be resolved. I'm sorry, not CAFR, the audit. The 18 audit to be completed. We're moving forward, working on prep work for our 19 and for our 20 as we can. So we're not sitting around waiting. We're actually doing work. They're doing work to get things done. So we're in a position to try to get it completed. We're not sitting and waiting for something to finish. We've already started work on the next audits.
Why can't we just cancel out
can't
18
tell.
if it's been 2 years? It's been 2 years just doing
I
18.
can't tell.
Why can't we just stop it, March?
Why can't we just stop it?
Yes, it's been 2 years working on one
Yes.
audit. Why can't we just council decide to just stop, submit whatever we got, and so we can move
Yes.
Well, we're in a position right now where you could, and we'll take our hits and we'll take our lumps and
Yes.
move on. We're anticipating that the audit work will be completed and ready for review in the next week or two, and hopefully have an audit done in May, in the middle of May. But we could just say, here it is, throw our hands up in the air. Now they have to be able to have something to audit. That's the other piece, is they have to be able to do, they have to have something to be able to audit and render some level of opinion on, or they'll just disclaim everything.
But wasn't that a choice that was made? And I'm not trying to be funny. That did not come to council the last 2 audits when it came to 4 different areas: stormwater, wastewater, the beacon, and I forgot the other one. We did not make the decision to just say, we don't have it, just make a decision. But that was done with 2 prior audits. So, if you're going to say that you can have it done within the next week or so, I guess it's a decision for council. But if that is not met, why can't we just do the same thing that was done previously, so we stop bleeding money off of an audit that cannot be finished? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So what we have is those issues are what they said was the findings were inaudible. What we're trying to avoid is a disclaimer on cash. So that would be the reconciliations of city and schools cash. That's the big issue.
So what does the cash look like today? What do you know about the cash?
I know that we have the 3 outstanding issues that the auditor has asked the treasurer to look at on the city side, which I don't think have been addressed yet.
What does she have to do?
They would have to go back and look at their cash reconciliation to see if they can find the transaction. So in one instance, we know that a bond payment has been made. We see where.
That's the same thing we heard a year ago.
Yep, it still hasn't been addressed.
Yeah, but she did address it.
Ms. Pelham, I'm sorry. I just want to be clear as what auditor we're talking about that is asking for the information from the treasurer. Is it an auditor from that we have, or is it outside contract?
It is our outside auditor, Robinson, Farmer and Cox.
Okay.
They have asked for the information. They have said, we need you to supply this to us. To my knowledge, it still has not been addressed.
And what I was told is that the numbers that you wanted her to authenticate, it was numbers that she either was not here or had nothing to do with. And you say she does on our side. Somebody lied.
I just wanted to also mention this to the viewers and those who are watching tonight. We use CAFR has been, we shouldn't use CAFR anymore. And Mr. Ullman, you can go ahead and verify that. But you're going to get CAFR and annual audit interchangeably. Annual audit is actually when we say annual audit, we are saying CAFR. So I'm hoping that we can start moving away from saying the CAFR, because there wasn't something that came out, Mr. Altman, that we shouldn't use that terminology anymore?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, provided guidance earlier this year, maybe in the February timeframe. So the acronym that we use, CAFR, for Consolidated Annual Financial Report, it's spelled differently, but it's pronounced the same, is a derogatory comment used in South Africa. GFOA, who has members in South Africa, has put out guidance, and I'm pretty sure I sent it to y'all when it came out, that we should use the terminology audit, annual financial report, as opposed to using the acronym CAFR and pronouncing it, because when you pronounce it, it sounds exactly like this derogatory language used in South Africa. It's spelled differently in South Africa, but the pronunciation is the same. So we need to use the word audit or annual financial report or annual something along those lines.
Thank you. I did not catch that email. Thank you.
I would like to, ask if moving forward, we can eliminate that acronym from, and let the public know that terminology is no longer used and it has been replaced by annual audit or financial audit.
Yes. Yeah, we are working. My apologies for that slipping through with this slide, but yeah, we're working to everywhere we used to have the acronym, we're replacing that.
But while we're doing that, in reality, the annual audit really is 2 parts. It's just not the CAFR, because we always say the CAFR, but really it's a CFA and that. Yeah. Please tell me there's nothing wrong with CFA.
No, there's nothing to my knowledge wrong with utilizing that acronym for the single audit.
Okay, so the annual audit is really 2 components, but we only talk about one. So like that would be good to clarify too, especially when we're talking about getting caught up, because we haven't finished the CFAs for everything else. But back to the question at hand. So you're saying that the year-old request that we talked about still has not been resolved with the auditors that we have contracted out to do our audits, correct?
To my understanding, the auditor has met with the treasurer and is awaiting the response from the treasurer's office.
But to clarify my question about can we stop the madness, you're saying that you don't want there to be a finding about cash. Is that why you're holding out for the schools and the treasurer's office? So we avoid that? Is that what you're trying to say?
I would like not to have a disclaimer on cash. If we have to, we have to, and we just take our lumps and move forward.
You got to.
So, but
What's the negative in taking the hit on the cash? Does that preclude us from getting us bond rating higher, or?
You don't have a bond rating right now.
I know we don't. When we
Sorry.
I know that, but I'm saying, what is it? What is, so what if you take the hit? What is the consequences?
well, you don't want to take a hit on cash because that's kind of your bread and butter. I mean, that's
Because
the cash in, cash out, the reconciliations, correct in that we don't have a bond rating. So even if we take a hit on cash, it's not going to have an effect because we don't have one right now. We may.
But so if we don't have one, then so why not take it? We've been auditing for 2 years and paying people for audit and writing a one-line thing and billing us over and over again for
But again,
audits, and we're not getting anything.
Again, Ms. Pelham, when the city finished its work on our side and our stuff for 18, we began to work on 19 and 20. So we're working on future. It's not that we're just paying.
Okay. Email us and tell us what y'all have done so far for 19 and 20. And then I'll opinion out over for that.
Mr. Altman, the work that you guys said that you're continuing to do, would that be adjusted whenever you get the numbers from the schools and the treasurer's office?
Yes.
So you'll have to go back and fix whatever.
The numbers will have to be adjusted on the school side when they're done. When theirs are done, there will have to be some adjustments. Schools, cash, and I think, definitively, then the treasurer will have to make those adjustments in her recon.
Would it be significant adjustments? So what I'm trying to ask is, would it be a waste of time?
I don't know that it would be a waste of time. I'm sorry, that it would be a waste of time at this point to get it fixed.
No, what I'm saying is, if you said you move forward, but if you move forward and you don't have your cash, then when you get the cash, are you going to have to go back and redo all the work done, or just pieces of it?
No, ma'am, we're not going to have to go back and redo all the work.
Okay, so I guess my last question is, because this truly is just, it needs to stop in some way, shape, or form. So, I mean, if the push is to not get a ding because of this cash part, what can we do besides keep waiting for something that's not going to come?
So that's why I want to come back to council with a proposal to get the resources we need in place to get them all done this calendar year and get them all behind us.
No, I'm talking about 18, not in general. I'm talking about 18 because it's been 2 years. So you said that you're still waiting on something from the schools and the treasurer's office, and you don't want to close it out because you want those 2 things. What can we do to get those 2 things so we can close this thing out?
Where we are with my understanding, where we are with schools is they're making their final adjustments right now. And then that would be then have to be given to the treasurer for her to make adjustments to the cash recon. And then we're ready. Then it's given to the auditor.
And I'm just probably not going to be an advocate for the schools, but respectfully, we should look at them having to, both groups looking at reimbursing at some point, because we are paying a lot of money and we're being held up between those departments. It's not fair, especially when they're asking for increases. We're not being able to do raises and other things that we need to do as a locality. Look at positions. We froze positions since 2016. We slipped in a few, but quite frankly, I mean, there has to be joint accountability for the cost and what's going on with it out there. And that's
can I interject, Mayor? I mean,
yes, you can ask a question, and then I just have a quick question.
Yeah, because my thing is this: when I requested some time ago, why can't we get the school system, the treasurer, Michael Terry, his representative, BML, and everybody in the same daggone room and let all of them tell us who's doing what. Because we just go round and around the circles, it seems to me. I remember Dr. Hackney saying the schools had done everything. Mr. Treasurer said the same thing. So everybody needs to get in the room and tell what they've done and what they're not doing. Something is not right. And we sit back and as counselors, 2 years. Yeah.
That meeting was called, Councilor Pelley.
Yeah.
It was called.
So as an informational session, I would like to ask Mr. Altman, if I know that this has been it's been going back and forth between the treasurer and the schools for almost for over 2 years, right? So my question is, if the schools aren't giving what they need to get done, right? And who is telling them that they don't have everything? Who is throwing it back to them and saying, hey, look,
The auditor,
you need to do this?
Fox and Comp and whatever the name is.
I'm not asking you, Councilor Pelham, I'm asking Mr. Altman.
So the auditor, our outside auditor, working with them, and then our internal audit team working with them to try to resolve the issues for the outside auditor.
Oh my, that's too many.
Okay, so when they sent it to the outside auditor came in with recommendations, right? What they needed from schools.
Yeah, we need, if I remember, it was 3 things on the city side, and there were 5 or 6 issues on the school side. And
Okay, so it goes to the city, it goes to schools, and it comes to the city, right? So they say, okay, you need to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. Then schools say, hey, look, I did 1, 2. This is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Treasurer said I did 1, 2, 3, and 4, but I can't. 1, 2, and 3, but I can't do 4 because schools need to do something, right? So, and then it gets tossed back. It's a lot. Everybody's just flicking the booger. You did it. Oh, you know what? It's not right. Flick it back. What is it? I think it's a communication problem here, because it doesn't take 2 years for an auditor to say, I need you to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the schools follow the instructions, give it back, and then they say, you know what? You need to do 1, 3, and it just keeps on going back and forth, and nobody wants to take credit for it. How do we stop it? I don't know. Is it going through in our audit team? Are they in between the auditor? So our internal auditor that we have, are they the liaison between the contracted auditor and the schools and the treasurer and the auditor?
our internal audit team works to get the financial statements in an auditable fashion. So when you give it to the external auditor, they review and have comments back. Our CAFRA team, and they have comments back. In this case, they had comments back to schools, and then our team will try to work with schools to get those issues resolved to the satisfaction of the external auditor.
But I don't understand, if the auditor is if we already have an auditor saying that this is what they need, why do we need somebody on the inside to say, okay, this is what the auditor needs? And then they're like, it's just like a hard stop, Is that
There has to be a point person internally for every audit. Like at my bank, I'm the point person for our regulatory audits. We don't let them just go to staff and start asking for a bunch of stuff. We look at it to make sure of what we're giving to them. And so they're acting as the point person internally.
So is the point person not getting the right information, or doesn't know how to communicate what exactly is needed? Because for 2 years, we're asking the same things over and over. It can't be that many things how long does it have to take? Anyway, I'm done.
Give them something, there may be a change in what the auditor's seeing. when they ask for something, they're looking at records that are given to them that are supposed to represent what they're asking for. That may give them other questions to ask on how something was done, what the process was, verification. And I know schools, even though they said, like Ms. Pelham said earlier, that they were done, they found that they weren't quite done. And they've been working recently. I agree. I don't want this drug out constantly.
But should it take 2 years for them? And then finally,
Well, I
hey,
don't
look, you
know
know what? After a month of them going back and forth, council needs to get involved. And how can we do that? I'm
Well,
just with
council
council
needs to get
right now.
involved, but
Madam Chair, to your point, if you recall, one, there was 2 work sessions called to bring everyone to the table. But to your point about last year, but to your point about when council gets involved, the contract that was just passed for the finance director for services, it included reporting if there was a request that was not fulfilled. And there was timelines and expectations for when that information was to be reported back to council.
And monthly reports.
So the question is, where's that information?
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Pelham, Councilor Pelham, you can go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, she said what I was gonna say. And basically, if we haven't gotten any reporting back, as you both have said, from the finance director or anyone. And so my other question would be is Mr. Altman, what did the auditors ask for particularly that y'all internal team could not give them?
I don't know the specific questions that the auditor asked of schools.
Are you on that team?
It wasn't something that the internal audit team couldn't provide. It's something that schools has to provide.
Okay, so you like the liaison between everybody else that they need something from. So that's the question. They requested from you guys this information from the schools. You in turn asked the schools for it. They have not provided it for you. Now,
so it isn't that they haven't provided it. It's that they provide information. The auditor then has additional questions. It isn't that they're not providing anything. It's that they ask for something, they get something, their auditor reviews it and says, well, I think you need to make this adjustment or we need this additional information.
12 months.
Going back and forth. I understand completely.
I can't tell because somebody got to put the pencil down and say, look, you got to get this information and something just have to be put aside. I mean, if you give us a open and elongated and total transparent budget, I mean, money that we spend on this audit, I know it has to be probably, an audit costs $125,000. We paid multi-millions of dollars on audits.
We haven't.
They getting paid but us.
that's because the contract that they allowed back in those days didn't put a cap on additional costs. This one did not allow for additional costs.
It started with Chair Becker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And that cost the city way more money than it ever should have.
But this one is going to cost it's cost already just much.
Well,
How much?
but we also have outside people being hired to work on stuff that we are not being clear about.
Another
Additional contracts that we're being signed that we don't know about. So there's a lot of factors to why the cost went up besides just the contracts themselves. But I mean,
so we have provided to council. We have provided to council, and we can update it cost to date for all the audits that have been done.
And every contractor Mr. Terry hired, if he's
we're not okay. So look,
Mr.
Terry isn't hired. We have an agreement with VML VACO, and they provide staffing. Okay, Mr. Terry isn't going out and hiring a bunch of people. We have VML VACO. They provide us staffing to assist with our audit. That's where we are. We have
Give us an update. Give us an update. I would like to know.
Provide you an update. Okay. I would really love to be able to present the rest of the budget.
Well, I would like, well, you got to.
So how are we going to resolve this? I know we want to move on, but quite frankly, this is the issue that we've all keep talking about. So what is the plan?
Well, we can't take any action tonight because this is a work session, but we can definitely talk about a solution to moving forward on how we will move forward. Counselor Gore?
Well, just for
Mm.
clarity, I'm not talking about Mr. Altman's plan that he's going to bring back to us at a separate work session. I'm particularly talking about this one with 18.
I
So,
think they're waiting for schools to finish,
I'm not
and
gonna
that's going to be it, because we can't, there's going to be nothing else are going to resolve, I don't think.
That's right.
so Mr. Altman, did you give them a time? Like, so we're just waiting around for them to finish their stuff, basically. Is that what you're saying? Am I being sarcastic? That's what I'm
No. So we're not just waiting around. They're, my understanding is they have the final adjustments being made this week. That's my understanding. And then that will be provided to our outside auditor for them to do their audit work.
Okay, so what's going on with the treasurer's office?
The treasurer, well, so the final adjustments will be made by schools. They'll give it to the treasurer. There'll have to be adjustments made, issues that the schools have discovered in their work. Then the adjustments to the cash recon will have to be given for the treasurer to do. The auditor will be able to then audit the financial statements for schools and the city and have an audit opinion. And in that audit opinion, if additional issues arise or something isn't addressed to the auditor's satisfaction, then they're going to write it up and it'll be a finding.
So the treasurer, you're not waiting on anything. You're waiting for the schools to give the information to the treasurer.
The treasurer, so that we still have our issues that the auditor came in and said, these are the 3 things we need you to look at. If that hasn't been resolved to the auditor's satisfaction, then the auditor will write that up as a finding with regard to the treasurer's office. Schools will have to bring their stuff over. The treasurer will have to make adjustments to the cash recon for schools. And then if there are issues there that aren't resolved to the auditor's satisfaction, then the auditor will write that up also.
Right.
Okay.
Is there there's a high concern for me. I would like to know within this budget that we are going to start filling positions instead of contracting them out. So I would like to know if that was, if that finance director position will be within the budget as well.
Yes.
As a position.
The finance director position as a full-time position isn't in the budget where we didn't propose. I didn't propose a full-time finance director position for the budget. We've entered into the contract. We'd have to terminate the contract with Mr. Terry, and then we would use those funds that were remaining to recruit a full-time finance director.
So I have a question. We can't do both at the same time. We can't recruit and have a contract because it's going to take some time.
So this gets to Mrs. Gore's comment about my plan that I want to bring to council to bring all of this to a head. That's what I've talked to y'all and said we'd be bringing a plan to complete our audits this year, bringing the resources needed to bear. And some of it will have to be contract because we're going to have to bring in the resources to get it focused and done. And at the same time, we can look at what we're doing from an internal perspective. We've been so focused on just trying to get the audit work completed that we need to begin to look at what our finance department looks like outside of that environment and on a day-to-day basis beyond just trying to get audits completed. And that's part of that plan.
When is the tentative time we're going to have that work session?
I want to have that work session in May. I don't have a specific date at this point in time. I'm trying
to answer my question.
Juggle this and that.
All right.
My hand up.
But can we do both? Can we put the notice to, position out as a position while we do have a contract in place? Is that something we can do?
We can do that, but I'd like to have a conversation with Mr. Terry before I move forward doing that.
Well, he is a contractor, and within the contract, we did have talked to him about the services. So, I would love for him to still be here because, he does do our out of scope work as well. But, you know, as far as a finance director, we do need someone who's within the city.
Yes.
So if we
I
do,
don't disagree, but we just said we couldn't hire new positions for what we were looking at if we were going to do a COLA and some other things. So I think it bears in mind that we have to have another discussion about this. I would like to see a full-time finance director too, but I think that has to be taken into consideration for all of the positions that we were looking at hiring versus now not, because of some other things that we've talked about tonight. So that picking and choosing that we talked about earlier
yeah.
And that
needs to include that as well.
my hand was up.
We're running out of time too. We've got about 25 minutes. Just want to bring that up for everyone.
Jumped in front of me.
Oh, you can speak.
Well, my thing is the same thing. Will you place that financial director on the list, the same list, so we can have options to pick from? Because I don't see it feasible to have a contractor to select other contractors to make the city whole. To me, that's just one of the problems up there. It's just so many people contracted out. Who financially is looking out for the best interests of the city? It's just too much. But I'll wait to see the numbers tomorrow to justify my end, I'm sure. But I think the finance director is a high priority. Sometimes you just have to sacrifice. This is definitely a sacrificial moment. Thank you.
Mr. Gore.
So I'm not opposed to none of that because I agree that we need to separate the auditing team from the finance team. But just to make sure I'm on the same page, if we're going to have this on the list for consideration with the other positions, he would need to have the work session with his idea in order for us to really put perspective on the options. Realistically. So if that were to be the case, then that pushes back our budget conversations, which, you know, I don't care, but if that's what will account for, I think, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Altman, but I would think that he would need to present first, then pick back up and give us these options to where it makes sense, right?
Yep.
Are you asking for feedback?
Well, yeah, for Mr. Altman, because that would, just realistically, that would need to happen. And if that's the case, then how would that adjust his, the current budget timeline? And I know we always make adjustments, so I'm not, big on that. I just want to understand, would that be the realistic approach if we are going in this direction?
So I don't know that it has to be done in the budget straight timeline, because if we're going to bring, what I've said is I'm going to bring a proposal outside of the budget. So it's not in here. This is what we would need to have. We have funding available. This is what we would need to do. And what we can do there is part of that proposal, as opposed to if we want to have a full-time finance director, which I think in the, at the end game, that's what we want to have. And that's what I want to have. Then the money that's in the budget currently that we're utilizing for the contract can stay. That would be the salary for the position. And then you would have funding proposed in the plan that would cover the contract. So I don't know that you need to have one in addition to the other in the budget. I think you look to fund, this is what we need to do to get the project of getting our audits completed. And it's inclusive of all of this. And then you still have the funding in the budget that can be utilized for a full-time director of finance position. So I don't know that it's one or the other. I think you can do both.
No, what I'm trying to, when you say do both, what are you talking about? Talking about the issues? I guess what I'm trying to say is if you're going to present options for the finance director, wouldn't we need to know what your grand scheme plan is before we sit here and make a decision on anything?
I don't think that we have to make it as part of the budget process.
Oh, that's what you're trying to say. You're trying to go
Yeah.
back.
And
Okay.
if we can, if the thought is, and ultimately my desire is to have a full-time finance director, that's the thought, then we know that we have money in the finance budget that's currently being utilized for the contract as the salary. Then if we say, okay, we want to do that, but we still need that person and their knowledge that they have over
Yeah.
the finances that we've over the past few years and the ins and outs of where we need to find everything, then you just shift that contract over to the proposal that I'm going to bring forward for funding. This is what we need to get schools done and us done and everybody done now.
Using existing
Do that.
funds in the budget, but that only works if you use existing funds that's currently in the budget. And if that's the case, then you really need direction from council tonight, because if people are saying they want it in the budget conversation, then that does shift stuff. But if they want to stick with your plan, then whatever. But I think before we leave today, you need to have clarity on
Well, then,
where it's going to be discussed. Do you see what I'm saying?
yep.
Okay.
I see.
I mean, that's up for council to decide. I don't mind either way, personally.
No. Does council want to make this part of the budget conversation, have this part of the budget, or would they like this to be separated from the budget? I mean, it's not even taking action, it's just a consensus here. Anyone, any takers?
I personally think it might be better to separate the two issues, because I think you end up convoluting both issues because you overtalk and interchangeably mix the two issues together. That's just my personal opinion.
That's a great point. Anyone else?
Okay.
So I guess we're going to just separate it from this separate that from the budget, but how will we discuss it later is probably something that we'll probably touch back on.
That's that conversation of the work session
Okay.
to talk about the plan. So moving along, notable changes still. PD increases in PD and fire. We'll come back with the maintenance costs that for the service contracts. We've had an increase this year in overtime with PD, putting more officers on the street during certain hours and days of the week to make sure we have better coverage. Some increase in public works. This is one of those positions that we had that we took an opportunity to step back and say, we've had this position become vacant. Is it really doing what we want it to? And we reevaluated it and elevated it because we wanted to more with the position and move the whole organization forward. So that was one of those items there. Then we have some changes in, these are the changes primarily in the constitutional offices relating to that 5% increase that the comp board is providing. And then we have a deduction in general district court. They had a staff change and have less money there involved. We had, over our 5-year CIP request period, $32 million in projects submitted. For the coming year, we had $18 million in projects submitted with about $1.2 million to be able to fund it. And these are the projects that we're looking to do, making the $1 million towards our VDOT project to make them whole. We have a lease payment on the fire truck. There's some radio and hose replacement at the fire department, and then development needs to replace their scanner and large scale plant plotter and scanner upstairs, which while it's in development, all of our departments utilize that piece of equipment to scan large format plans and print large plans and different displays that we've used at different times at public meetings. So that's really, while it's a Department of Development expense, it's really utilized by the entire organization. And this is an opportunity, again, when we have the American Rescue Plan Act funding, that we can further our capital projects by utilizing some of those funds to address some additional issues that come about in one-time expenses. So these are our next steps. I'm not sure about the 27th. I thought we had a work session. I think that might have been a misprint when we did our budget calendar, because that's a normal regular council meeting next week, and we already have a work session proposed that night for a development issue. So we do have May 4th, which is the following Tuesday, that we don't have a meeting. So if council wants to do a work session on the 27th, we can, but just we already have a staff request for a development issue that evening, but we could certainly reschedule that for May 4th and have an evening like this where it's dedicated solely to the budget in our capital. Coming up,
that the May 4th, we can do the audit conversation work session. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just talking about trying to get through the budget. Just trying to get through budget right now.
Okay.
And then May 11th, we have our tax rate public hearing, along with the first public hearing for schools and city budgets. A final work session scheduled for the 18th, and looking to adopt both schools and city budgets on the 25th. And as Dr. Hackney alluded to when we met last week, because of year-round school, they have more of a pressing issue than they did last year to get contracts to teachers, because they'll be coming back in July. So trying to get this wrapped up. Then we, certainly within all of this, we'll have a separate work session to talk about the audit proposal and how to get that completed. But that's all I have this evening for council. We will come back with the list of options and how to fund them, kind of a menu of choices, if you will, to include the 2.5% COLA, the position, class and comp, ask for descriptions of what the service contract increases were, then the voter registration travel cost. Is it an in-person event or is it a virtual event? And then I think we have the discussion of the director. We'll handle that with the audit discussion at a separate work session.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Gore, and then Vice Mayor Parton. Councilor Gore, you had your hand up.
Sorry, I was on mute. Even though we are trying to keep the whole audit finance director separate, can we just go ahead and add that work session to this list, so that we, even though it is a separate conversation, we still want to track it? So is it going to be like the first meeting in June is when you're estimating? It needs to flow right behind this.
Yeah.
I thought this was May 4th.
May 4th is the one?
No, May 4th is what I'm suggesting to, because next week, the 27th, we had a capital improvement work session, but I think we missed our dates when we did the schedule, because that's actually a regular council meeting that night. And we've already got a development proposal for a work session that evening. So I was thinking we would have another budget and capital work session on May 4th. The audit work session would come later in May, and follow on the end of this. Yeah, I agree. It needs to follow up with this. Once we get this done, then we follow into getting that done and moving forward on getting all of our audits completed.
So you're saying the May 4th is going to be taken up with that April 27th one. So can we just go ahead and add on here when we meet next time, the proposed date to do the next work session that's available for that finance discussion?
So if we were following up on it, like following up after this is, let's assume we adopt a budget and we're going to follow up. Your first June 1st would be the first, not the first meeting, but the first Tuesday of June that you would, if you wanted to do it then.
I think you should ask council that. I mean,
I would like to have it sooner. That way we can figure out where we stand. I mean, if
May
that's
18th can be a tentative date too.
something that passed, I mean, I just don't understand.
Date. May 18th, because it says if needed.
Yeah. And that's there. I didn't know if y'all were going to have additional questions, but hopefully we have everything resolved on the 4th with the choices and council makes those, and we can certainly look to the 18th.
Okay,
So yeah, the 18th could be the soonest, and then if we can't do the 18th, then June 1st.
Yeah.
That,
I don't want to say just do the 18th because I don't know what questions y'all will have on the 4th. So I don't want to short your questions on the budget and any additional information or debate that we may have.
Can you internally plan for the 18th though?
Yep, we can.
Okay. I mean, if that's fine with council, because that's still before the budget, just in case people have, reservations. If that's cool with everybody else.
Fine with me.
Okay. The other thing I was going to bring up, when you bring back the options, Mr. Altman, for the class and comp study, the one thing we really need to take into consideration is if we do a class and comp study, and I'm not advocating either way, I'm just for consideration. When you do the study, staff is going to expect for us to implement, right? So we need to think about the timeline it would take to get that done. And if it's, and then have money built in to implement a phase of it, even though we don't know what that will look like. So you need to, in my opinion, put that in there along with a classic comp, because if you do it and when it sits there a whole nother fiscal, a whole budget cycle, that does not do good. You see what I'm saying? So I think that in my personal opinion, that when you do the option for the class comp, if you can do like a little separate thing underneath it with the estimated thing, you can look at the report from last time to get estimates that you can probably work from, and that should probably be considered as well, because again, it doesn't bode well if you do all that and don't do something with it.
Yes.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Parton.
Mr. Altman, and I mean, this is probably gets from City Council on this one. After our Wastewater Commission meeting today, where we talked about having that special meeting on May 12th to approve a capital budget, whether it's the proposed budget or a budget of some sorts, would it be feasible, or is it going, I guess, what would the impacts be if we tried to push the adoption of the tax rate resolution from May 11th to either the 13th or the 18th?
The tax rate's going to set what we do from a budgetary perspective, and the tax rate in this instance, we have to conduct a public hearing on the real estate tax rate. But if there's a thought that you may look at other tax rates or other fees, say stormwater, if you want to increase the stormwater fee to get more stormwater projects done, we may be able to do that at a later date. But you could still conduct, so you're going to conduct a public hearing on your tax rates. If you want to adopt that night, you can, or you can adopt. My guess is you're not going to increase the real estate tax rate. So you may adopt the real estate tax rate, because once that's done, that has an effect on getting bills out for our real estate tax payments in June. So, but if you wanted to say, well, hold on, we may want to tinker with personal property tax rate, you may not adopt all of them that night, but at least get the real estate tax rate done to allow that process internally to begin to move forward. Or if you wanted to do them all, like you said, on the 13th, then we're still in good shape. But the longer we delay in adopting the real estate tax rate, we impinge upon getting the bills out in a timely manner to get the June,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, I mean, real estate's not the one that I'm looking at right now. I guess, I just wanted to make sure that we could actually, I hate to use the word piecemeal, but maybe break it up so that way approve certain ones and then leave certain ones out there for discussion.
Mhm. Yeah. The only one that we've had to advertise that we proposed to change to, well, because of the reassessment, we had to advertise a change to the effective tax rate for real estate. And we've advertised that as a max rate of the 113, which we have now. We haven't, we're not proposing increasing it, but you've advertised it that's the ceiling.
Okay.
So, yeah, we could break it up if you wanted to. Not the prettiest thing in the world, but it would work.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Randolph?
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, I've heard through the grapevine that some counselors are talking to other counselors about potential tax increases. And I think that it would be nice if all counselors were talked to and some background information and impact would be developed if there is a consideration for specific tax increases for specific purposes. So I'm open to hear that, but thus far have not. So just wanted to put that out there. Thanks.
Thank you for that, 'cause I'm unaware of that tax increase conversation.
Yeah,
Also, Madam Chair, I know we have 5 minutes left, but this is the last thing. I thank Councilor Randolph for her comments, but can we just stay to hear what that conversation is so we're all on the same page?
Yes, please, because I really would like to know. I mean, if
So can I do a motion to just extend to finish this little potential tax increase?
Councilor Gore, I'll give you a call offline, just like the others. This is something I prefer not to discuss out in open session at this point, just because of it might put the city in a. I'm trying to think of a good way of putting it.
it's not something we want out there yet, but I think
it's
the whole point is to make sure everybody hears your conversation, Johnny. Or Mr.
I've gone through. I've talked to I think 3. So
Y'all are crazy.
I had time to hit every single person. That's all.
Okay.
I will also make sure that whenever you finish your calls, that the consensus be given to the city manager, because if the consensus is not to do anything, then we don't need to be advertising that either in our packets or online, because people are not going to know that the difference. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind. I guess it's kind of like I don't want to say like a litigation issue, but it's best something not discussed right now in open session. Until
No, I'm fine with that. You can call me offline, but what I'm saying is there was just an open conversation about potentially looking at increasing a tax. And what I'm saying is before the city manager puts that on any agenda for us to consider during a work session, there really needs to be a consensus if that's something we want to do. Because once it's put out there, whether we approve it or not, the public is going to see it and then they're going to run with it.
Right.
So when you do your polling, just make sure that the city manager gets a consensus, because there could be no need to put it on there at all. That's all I'm trying to say.
No, I'm right there with you. We're on the same wavelength.
All right.
So not to worry the public, this is just a conversation. And that has to be transparent within an open session. So please don't think that anything's happening, behind closed doors. Thank you.
Okay to you.
So that's all I have, Madam Mayor, members of council. We've got about 4 minutes left. And we'll come back and be prepared to present the information and the options at the May 4th work session.
Motion to adjourn.
That's what I raised my hand for.
Oh,
Second.
I wasn't paying attention.
No, that's okay. Second.
Roll call.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Pardon,
Yes.
Councilor Randolph,
Yes.
Councilor Holloway,
Yes.
Councilor Gore,
Yes.
Councilor Denton, Councilor Denton,
She dropped off.
Yes.
Counselor, okay. Counselor Pelham,
Yes.
Mayor Bennett, you have 6 yeses and 1 no answer.